If the law said intellectual property was supposed to be limited, the technology or the code of the internet could say it didn't have to be limited.
Yeah, I mean, it's loss of control, and I think that's natural, not just in business or in life, but in life, you know, we don't like losing control, but it's a very specific flavor or a very specific brand of losing control, and that is losing strategic advantage. Because when you control every step in the chain by which music is produced, marketed, promoted, distributed, and sold, you have a distinct advantage.
Like rats in a barrel, except they have the guns and they're on the inside shooting out and shooting holes in it, and it's sinking. And if it does, you know, good riddance to them. I really, you know, I'm not too worried about the 2% of people who make music who make a living off it, which is including me. I'm in the same category as Eminem, you know.
The fact is, technology giveth, technology taketh away. What was a business model in 1909 may be the business model in 2009. What was a business model in 1939 may not be the business model in 2007. That's how it goes.
It's explosion in creative freedom. An explosion that came not from the law, or not just from the law, but an explosion that came from technology. It was not earned by people changing the law, it was taken by people using technology. An explosion in digital creativity. This is something we could call remix.
Companies are sometimes not very good assessors of their interest, and sometimes a company's interest doesn't coincide with the public interest. You don't get the best possible Alice by getting the Alice that the Lewis Carroll estate would want. You get the best possible Alice by letting everyone make an Alice and seeing what emerges from it.
If you think of the large swath of extraordinary work with the Disney Corporation produced, and Walt Disney in particular, you see an extraordinary range of this work is work that builds on work that was in the public domain. The stories of the Brothers Grimm become the source material that Disney uses to create the great material that he creates. Indeed, Disney sometimes waited for a work to pass into the public domain before they would release a work based on it, sometimes would pay for work to make sure he could release work based on it. But the point is, his work was always continuing the conversation of a culture. It was an expression through a remix of the stuff that went before.
Walt was, as you say, someone who liked to draw his inspiration from the public domain, from other works around him. Sometimes they licensed stuff, but a lot of times they just took fairy tales and mixed them up and put them back together again. He was a mashup artist.
He wants to know about the mashup thing. Well, I think that, you know, having been involved in this appropriation kind of world of art stuff for a good while, we keep getting to these points where I think, wow, appropriation is really getting mainstream. It's really getting more and more into the culture as a mainstream technique. And I just can't imagine it getting any bigger than this. And then mashups happened. And mashups just blew it out of the water.
This form of creativity celebrates the very best, in my view, of what we can call remix creativity. Taking and building on the past to make something new. But after Walt steps aside, not so voluntarily, the company changes in an important way. Now the focus is not so much on celebrating remix creativity, it's about exercising a certain control over other creators who would build upon Walt Disney, and a push to extend the term of copyright that Walt Disney enjoys so that it can maximize its control and its revenue over this creative work, so that no one can do to Disney what Disney did to the Brothers Grimm. It suggests we need to learn something from the mistakes that we have made so far. First, we need to build a grassroots movement to make it understandable to everybody why the freedom here is so important. And secondly, we need to emphasize the creativity and not the, quote, theft that goes on here.
But I think that a lot of the work that's going on is really starting to open up the eyes of the general public. I mean, no one can go plausibly before a legislature anywhere in the world and say, we need to have this really, we need to have DRM on books, because otherwise there'll be no financial incentive and no one will produce an encyclopedia. Oh, well, we know that's not true because, look, people did produce Wikipedia, and they did it freely and in a free license regime. So I think it's really been important that we have these kinds of examples starting, because that helps us to avoid the worst cases where the movement gets killed before it gets off the ground.
I'm a copyright criminal. We're all copyright criminals. We've created a legal regime that makes it impossible to go about your daily round without violating it.
Build a grassroots movement, that's the green in the Creative Commons sign, of creators, otherwise known as copyright owners, who take the default world of all rights reserved and modify it. They mark their creativity with signs that say freedom. These rights you have. So all rights reserved is modified to some rights reserved. Spreading an understanding among people about the importance of balance in this regulation of culture.